Welcome to North Bay 101, a weekly analysis of the top stories from California's North Bay region. Reporters and editors from 5 surrounding counties take an in-depth look at the headlines shaping our community. I'm Chandra Back.
Some kids I talk to say, yes, I'm a phone addict, get me away from my phone.
And now they're actually talking to each other.
Our youth are seeing the effects on themselves, the ones who are able to control it and the ones who are not.
Back to school season looks a little different in California this year. New cell phone restrictions are taking effect in schools across the state as educators grapple with concerns about distraction, social media, and student well-being. The hope is more focus in the classroom and more connection between students. But will it work? This week on North Bay 101, we explore how schools are navigating the shift and what happens when students are forced to start interacting more face-to-face. I'm joined today by K-12 education reporter with CalMatters, Carolyn Jones. Carolyn, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Also with the San Francisco Chronicle, the reporting intern on the Metro desk, Delilah Brumer. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And Andrea, Correia, the principal of Pioneer High School with the Santa Rosa School District.
Yes, thank you.
And finally, Dr. Frank Worrell, professor of education at the school psychology program at UC Berkeley. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here.
Carolyn, to start us out, why are we suddenly hearing about schools restricting or banning cell phones throughout the state?
Sure. The state has started taking action on this quite a few years ago. It actually started in about 2019. The state's kind of taken incremental steps towards restricting or banning cell phones on campus. But starting this school year, all school districts in the state are required to adopt a policy either restricting or banning cell phones. So that's why it's kind of in the news right now, and we're hearing a lot about it.
Zooming in from the California level, Delilah, you've been covering this implementation throughout the Bay Area and thinking through elementary school, middle school, high school, a lot of different districts. What are you seeing?
It's pretty varied. I mean, obviously districts have to have some sort of policy, but they do have a good amount of leeway in terms of what they're actually banning or restricting day to day on the ground. And so some districts, even high school kids can't have phones out during lunch. They can't have them out at all. They have to have them in locked pouches. Other districts, middle school, elementary school students might have to do that while high school students can have them out at lunch. And what I've seen in my reporting is that the students are pretty on board with at least the bans during classes. I think what I've seen that varies the most is student responses to bans during lunch and passing periods is where some of the tension is.
Carolyn, when you visit these schools that have already adopted restrictions, what are educators pointing to that is changing, that we can hope might be changing in the future with these other bans?
Well, there's a big difference I've noticed between what the research says and then what I hear anecdotally from teachers and students. When you ask someone directly, what do you think about cell phone bans? Just about everyone says, that's great. We need to ban cell phones. But when you kind of dig down into the reality, it's a little bit more nuanced. I think there's been some research that shows that initially there's not much of an impact, but then over time, student well-being improves. But then some teachers say it doesn't make any difference, and they hate being phone cops, and they actually don't like the ban because they feel like, students can use their phone in their classroom. I use it in lesson plans or something. So, and then students too, are, of course, very smart and ingenious at coming up with ways to get around the phone ban. Sometimes they'll put dummy phones in the pouches. Students are smart. So even though they might say, yeah, I'm all in favor of a phone ban, the reality might be a little bit different.
Andrea, Santa Rosa City Schools adopted a district-wide device policy. What does the policy look like at Pioneer High?
So the policy at Pioneer High is set up to respond to our board policy, which they enacted this summer. And it is a no phone zone completely during school hours. So we have no phones in our classrooms and we have no phones at break and lunch. And that includes earbuds, headphones, iPads, whatever.
What does no phones mean on Piner's campus?
Right. So we have provided each classroom with a phone locker that allows students to put their phone in the locker if they feel like they're going to be distracted by it or they want to put it there. We have teachers that have provided chargers for them as a motivation to put those phones in the lockers. And then the locker is mobile. So teachers, if there's an emergency or an evacuation for any reason, that teachers can grab that, take it out of the class with them.
What strikes me about this ban is when we hear the word ban, it sounds very restrictive. Frank, thinking about student autonomy across the board, when young people are told they can't have access to something, what tends to happen?
Well, there's a process called reactance, which we've probably all heard. Maybe when we were younger, we did the same thing. My father told me, don't drive on that narrow street, and I did anyway and hit the car, and then lied about where I was driving. So that's something that I think youth do. I think the point that Andrea made is really important, though, and Carolyn made the point, too, that there's an autonomy issue here, but there's also a competence issue and a relatedness issue. If you think about it in motivation theory terms, students need to develop cognitive skills, social skills. So they're in school for a reason. And I think there's a growing recognition that that's being interfered with, right? That the cell phones are driving behavior. And then a sense of belonging, right? Because if you are not on your phone, you can talk to your friends. It's interesting when you look at people with phones now, you have a group of friends sitting together, but they're not interacting with each other. They're interacting with the device. And so getting rid of the device or putting it away, at least for a period, allows them to, in fact, engage with each other and develop social competence. And so I think that youth are beginning to recognize that more and more.
Carolyn, from your reporting when you're talking to students, has there been initial backlash? Have students seen the positive effects of this? What are the responses there?
Oh, yeah, it really varies. Some kids I talk to say, yes, I'm a phone addict. It's a problem. Get me away from my phone. And they're very happy. They're glad to see this happen. And then other kids are like, what? I did, talk to some folks at a charter school down in Southern California a couple of years ago. They were among the first schools in California, if not the country, to enact a total, complete cell phone ban. And initially, the students and the parents were completely appalled. But over time, they did sort of get it. And when they started to see, kids' relationships at school improved, bullying went down, fights went down. I think the overall campus culture started to improve. Initially, there was pushback, but then once people saw the positive effects, they went with it. And they actually enjoyed it. They liked it.
Delilah, what are students saying here? Is there pushback? Are people on board? What's the sentiment?
A lot of students, especially high school students, have been saying that they're on board largely, that they also see, peers using various mechanisms to get around it, but that they really just want respect and a stake in it. And I think that a lot of teachers and administrators have been pretty receptive to that. I spoke to students who are on local leadership councils at their schools who really want to be able to have a say in these policies, and they have had a say. And that, I think, has also increased a lot of student buy-in. When students get to say, this is why we feel this way about this part of the policy, then they're more likely, at least from what I've seen on the ground, to be okay with it when it actually happens.
Andrea, is that something that you're thinking about at Piner, is trying to bring students into the conversation around these policies?
I think there is a level of respect, like Delilah or Carolyn addressed, and students want to be respected. And any question you ask me, it's all going to come down to relationships, right? What relationships do we have with our students? Is there mutual respect? How are we building those relationships? And really, I think it's important to teach students what is appropriate, when it is appropriate, and then give them the latitude to say, hey, this is an appropriate time for me to use my cell phone to conduct this personal business that I have, and I won't mistreat it, and I won't disrespect the rules of the school, but can I have 5 minutes to do this? And so I think that it's in my opinion, I think that we're going to see some switches or changes a little bit to what's going on with local policies for cell phone uses, specifically at Brake and Lynch. And just in Sonoma County alone, we have many school districts in Sonoma County. We are the largest school district, but there are many. And Our neighbors to the north and south allow cell phones at break and lunch for their students. So it's a matter of time for the 1,800 kids I have here to say, hey, wait a minute, why do they get to do it at Rancho and I don't get to do it here, right? And so I'm anticipating those conversations will start coming. Right now, we're a little bit in the honeymoon stage. We're only on day 9 of school, and kids are being very well behaved. And so we'll see in October or November when they get comfortable how it kind of rolls out.
It's almost a bit surprising to me hearing that a lot of students are on board with having something restricted or even banned that is such a part of their everyday lives. Frank, is this something that is surprising to you, or is this in line with your research?
Well, I think it's not entirely surprising. We've been talking about cell phones for a while. And in fact, if you think about it, the US is a little late to this. I think Australia had made the news. The UK had made the news about bans of this sort. So this is actually percolating around the world. And so our youth are seeing the effects on themselves, the ones who are able to control it and the ones who are not. And so I think that that's actually leading them, in fact, to be more open to policies like this so that it takes out of their hands, as Carolyn was saying, and take this phone away from me, I'm addicted. Because when we think about it, it's not the phone per se, but what the phone allows access to, right? TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Gen AI, all of these other things, right, that are pulling our youth. You know, the big Facebook settlement that just happened with Meta. So there's a recognition that there's something going on by the youth.
Carolyn, as Frank mentioned, this week Meta agreed to a proposed $17 billion settlement over alleged harms to young social media users. Why does it seem like concerns about phones and social medias are reaching a new level now?
Well, yeah, it does seem like we're kind of at a tipping point with recognition that social media could have really harmful effects on young people, and also phones can be addictive. I remember it wasn't that long ago when that just seemed like heresy, like, what? I love my phone. But the other thing I think about, too, is just kind of looking at the bigger picture of the role of technology in schools. I mean, it's sort of all over the place right now. We're at a really interesting time. We're cracking down on phones at the same time that AI is in the classroom. More and more and more and more. So it just seems like we're just trying to kind of get our heads around the wider impact of technology on young people, especially as it relates to their education.
Delilah, you are a senior now in college. So it's been, less than 5 years since you've been out of high school. Now going back to report in high schools, have you noticed changes in the way that students are thinking about cell phones, technology, social media, than you remember your experience?
I went to public high school in Los Angeles and I grew up in LA. And as the bans and policies were rolling out in LA, I was already in college, but it was one of the earliest areas to adopt cell phone policies in California. And I have seen it shift a bit in that at first, students were very upset, at least from what I saw. And there was, as they were seeing, okay, wait, I actually feel a little bit better when I'm talking to my friends versus when I'm on my phone next to my friends. There has been more of a buy-in. So I think, interestingly, I think a lot of the buy-in has come after the policies, not during the implementation, not during the proposal, but after they've already been in place for a little while.
Frank, I see you nodding your head.
Yes, I think Delilah made a really important point, and that is when the bans go into place in many places, there is an uptick in misbehavior, for example, on the part of students as they act out. There is actually a decrease in a sense of well-being. But when they stay in place long enough, the misbehavior goes down, the well-being goes back up as they recognize. And so it's one of the things that I think schools that are doing this need to recognize, that you can't just do it and then if there's a concern, you get away from it. You've actually got to let it play out so that, in fact, the benefits come to light, as Delilah was pointing out.
Carolyn, is that in line with what you've seen in your reporting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. People balk at it initially and perhaps have a little bit of withdrawal symptoms, the DTs, and they act out. But then over time, they become more supportive of it.
And Andrea, you said right now it feels like a honeymoon phase where maybe students don't know that other kids in other districts can still have their phone at lunch, but you're waiting to see reactions. What does long-term look like for you in waiting to see what's going to happen at Pioneer High?
I think I've learned in my experience of working in schools is that nothing happens quickly, right? And so you have to give it some time. And then as you evolve into whatever it's going to look like, it will come to a place where people can live with. And hopefully you will find success and that you have the ability to say, okay, we are not being successful. Let's take a look at something else and then change ways, right? I will be very honest and say that I thought we were going to have a bigger issue, and we have had no issues. And as we go out for break and lunch, kids are talking, they're communicating. We have more kids that are buying into our student leadership group. So we've already seen quite a bit of behavior that isn't typical for the start of a school year, specifically when phones have been out. And you guys talked about how you'll see a group of kids sitting down and all of them are on their phones playing a game together. So they're playing a game together on their phones while sitting together. And we've always just been like, that is the oddest thing. And now they're actually talking to each other and the phones aren't out. The cutest thing they do right now is they'll pretend to be on phones because they see me coming and they'll be in a little huddle and I'll zip over and be like, what are you doing? And they'll have a piece of paper pretending to type. And I'm like, oh, you're funny. Okay, here we go. So they see what's going on. And they're okay with it.
What's interesting hearing from Carolyn about the evolution of her reporting and going from phones being seen as a distraction to more research coming out. I know you've had over 30 years of experience working in schools. What about today feels different than before? You said, it's not normal to start a school year where kids are interacting and talking. Explain to me a little bit about the change that you've seen with technology.
Over the years, I have seen quite a bit of change, but nothing as much as after coming out of the pandemic. And I think that when students had to be in shelter in place or lockdown in homes, we don't know the type of home they live in. We cannot take for granted that every home is the same. And so that cell phone became their lifeline to the outside world. And then when they came back into school, we had kids that had missed like 18 months of any type of social negotiation. And that phone was a part of who they were. And so to try and take it away or to show them that there was a different way, it has taken time. And so we're now, 5 years out of that? And we see our kids recognizing that that isn't the best way to be. And technology is a good thing when used appropriately, but they're still children. And we need to teach them what that is. And so I think that what we're seeing is that our teachers are more on board. Our families are more on board. They're partnering with schools and saying, hey, we recognize that this is not the best way to do it. Let's try and work together.
The idea behind these cell phone bans in schools is meant to help students focus, connect with each other more, have all of these positive effects. But in a post-high school world, there are no bans.
Yeah, but there's the appropriateness of it, right? And that's what we have to learn is that children are children and adults are adults. And there has to be some type of personal responsibility for how we behave in public society, how we behave within our communities. And it's the job of educators to role model what that is and to lead that work. But parent participation has to happen. And without it, we will not be successful. So I'm very optimistic.
Frank, when you think about today's students as adults, what will you be looking for to understand whether these policies are actually doing some good?
I'll be looking to see if, in fact, these students who are now experiencing these bans, in fact, are having their kids have more healthy relationships with technology. I think that that's the long-term goal. We talk about in developmental psychology that you start off with other control and you move to self-control. And so that's the school is an important socializing agent in that process, moving from being controlled by others to controlled by self. Having students participate in developing the policies that then they follow. Those kinds of things would hopefully lead them to, in fact, continue to follow those policies even after they've left the school and have moved into the university and into the work environments. And that's what we would hope to see.
Carolyn, as you mentioned, we are at a tipping point. As you keep reporting What are you going to be keeping an eye on?
I mean, for one thing, right now, the state policy is pretty vague. It does give school districts a lot of leeway as to how they want to interpret this. And I imagine as a little bit time goes on and we see how this policy is succeeding or failing in various settings, there will be more legislation to kind of clarify it, like either an outright cell phone ban for everybody, lunchtime too, or maybe it won't. I don't know. And also enforcement is a big thing. There's lots of state policies on the books, and most of them don't get enforced, or they get enforced very sporadically, or it really varies depending where you are. So it'll be interesting to see how this is enforced. And then the other thing I'm looking forward to is if it's successful and if it's kind of universally agreed upon that this is a good thing, personally, I hope to see more phone bans, for adults maybe in certain settings. I personally would be very happy to put my phone in a Yonder's pouch. So I'd be curious to see, where we go from here on this. Why does it have to stop when you turn 18? Can I throw my phone off a bridge?
And lastly, thinking about actually being in schools and in classrooms, Andrea, you said you are optimistic. Talk to me about what success would look like.
I think I'm optimistic in general about young people right now. I see kids differently now. They are talking to each other. They're getting involved again. They are standing up in front of their peers. They're taking on more leadership roles, and not just because the phones are banned. And like I said, we never know what goes on behind closed doors. And so we really need to be aware of how we interact with young people and how we have those conversations, because we're trying to teach them what it means to be an adult and to live in this place where we are, which is Santa Rosa, and then how to create opportunities for themselves so that when they are adults, they can be successful. And that's really what we're focused on. And so I am optimistic.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and delving deeper into this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for North Bay 101, where each week KRCB and North Bay journalists bring you the stories shaping California's North Bay. Our thanks to today's reporters and guests: Carolyn Jones, CalMatters K-12 education reporter; Delilah Brumer, San Francisco Chronicle's Metro reporting intern; Andrea Correia, principal at Pioneer High School with Santa Rosa City Schools; and Dr. Frank Worrell, professor of education at UC Berkeley. For more updates, follow along at krcb.org. New episodes drop every Friday on YouTube, the NorCal Public Media app, all major podcast platforms, and right here on KRCB 104.9, Sonoma County's NPR station. This episode of the North Bay 101 was edited and produced by Max Allen, engineered by Mark Prell, production support by Greta Mart and Noah Abrams, with digital support by Kelly Olson. KRCB FM is managed by Catherine Nelson. North Bay 101 is a production of KRCB News and NorCal Public Media. Our president and CEO is Darren Lachelle. I'm Chandra Back. The nation's founders recognized a free press as an essential protection for the people. Today, KRCB's newsroom carries that responsibility with reporting that's accountable to the community we serve. Support trusted local journalism at krcb.org. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.